Hello everyone! Now that we have finished the creation myths, let's start exploring other stories from Greek mythology. This first one is about how the bee got its stinger. Now there are a number of different tales of Melissa, which is the Greek word for bee. However, I like the one Stephen Fry adapted from Aesop's Fables the best, which is the one that I will be telling you today. When Zeus and Hera got married, they invited all of creation, which did not include all that many creatures yet, for the world was still young and mortals had not yet been created. This was the event of, well, ever. Nymphs, oceanids, dryads, fauns, satyrs, and representatives from all of the animals were in attendance. Zeus even pardoned some of the titans for the occasion. Not Atlas or Kronos, of course. Part of the festivities would include a competition, a cooking competition. Whoever could create the best food could ask any favor of Zeus. Everyone wanted a chance at such an opportunity. Dishes of all kinds were created: cakes, breads, pastries, soups, and stews. Every delicious thing you could imagine were made for Zeus and Hera to taste. There were many strong contenders, but the gods were taken by one entry in particular. It was a small container filled with a sweet, thick, amber-colored substance. The dish's creator, a tiny flying creature named Melissa, called it honey. Zeus wasted no time in declaring Melissa's honey to be the winner of the competition. Melissa was delighted and flew straight up to Zeus's throne to ask her favor of the god. "O powerful sky father, most wonderful cloud gatherer, dearest Zeus, I have thought long and hard on what I would ask of you." "What you would ask of me?" replied a bemused Zeus. "Why, yes," Melissa excitedly continued. "You see, honey is quite difficult to make. It takes me many weeks of collecting nectar from plants, often traveling quite far from home to make even the smallest amount. And so many other creatures, drawn by the delicious smell of honey, seek to steal it from me. I ask of you, O merciful Zeus, that I may have some way to defend myself and my honey. Give me a deadly weapon, a stinger, so that no one will ever try to rob me again." Zeus grew quite angry at this. "You think you can make demands of me?" he roared. But you said the winner could make any request of you," stammered Melissa. "Oh yes," Zeus returned. "You may make a request, but I need not grant it." Melissa, tiny though she was, seemed to shrink even more in the face of Zeus's anger. "A talent like yours should be shared, not jealously hoarded. Your pride astonishes me, little Melissa," began Zeus, "and for that you shall pay. You shall get your deadly weapon. Whomever you try to sting will experience a sharp pain. However, it is you who will die from its use. I will make you a queen, however, a queen over a whole horde of workers, so that the creation of honey is made easier." With that, Melissa flew away in shame. The world learned a valuable lesson that day. Pride is a dangerous thing, especially in the face of a god's wrath. As for the honey that Melissa left behind at the wedding feast, Zeus blessed that container so that it would never run empty, and that anyone who tasted the honey from it would be blessed with eternal life. He called this ambrosia. So that was Melissa the bee. Now let's learn about Persephone and the seasons. The story of Persephone is one of the better-known Greek myths and one of my personal favorites, and it's one you may already be familiar with. She was the daughter of Demeter, the Olympian goddess of growth and of the harvest. Persephone was much beloved by all the gods. They even nicknamed her Cora, which means the maiden. The young goddess loved nothing more than to spend her days in the fields amongst the wild flowers and all of nature. She loved warm weather and sunlight. Persephone had a perfectly happy existence in the countryside, far away from all the other gods, untroubled by anything. All was well until one day, as she was walking in a meadow, the earth began to quake and split open. From the hole in the ground came a chariot. The driver of the chariot was none other than Hades himself, who scooped up the terrified Persephone and returned to the depths of the underworld, the earth closing up behind them, leaving no trace. Demeter was beside herself when no one could find her beloved daughter. The trees dropped their leaves, all the plants withered, and all the crops died, and mother mourned the loss of daughter. This was the first winter the world had ever experienced. Famine gripped the world and the mortals starved. Prior to this, there had been but one season, an eternal spring. And if Persephone was not found, there would still be the one season, eternal winter. Meanwhile, Persephone was enjoying a not unpleasant time in the underworld. Hades was kind, even loving towards her. Imagine a relationship much like Belle and the Beast. The two even grew to love one another. Eventually, the Olympians discovered Persephone's location. Zeus demanded that Hades return Persephone to her mother, threatening that no more mortal souls would be sent to the underworld if he refused. Hades reluctantly agreed, begging that he be given one more night with the girl he loved. Zeus begrudgingly allowed this request. Hades summoned Persephone and informed her that in the morning she would be returning to the world above, and asked her to share one last meal with him. Persephone picked absent-mindedly at a pomegranate, and Hades smiled, because he had a plan. In the morning, Hermes came to escort Persephone home, only for Hades to stop them. Persephone had eaten 6 pomegranate seeds, and it was a law that anyone, mortal or immortal, who ate while in the underworld must remain in that kingdom. Hades demanded that Persephone return to the underworld for 6 months out of every year, 1 for every seed she ate, and the other 6 she would be permitted to return to her mother. There was nothing anyone could do, for this kind of law could not be broken. Persephone returned to her mother, and the world immediately began to bloom. This marks Persephone as the goddess of spring, as her return marks the beginning of the season. When she returns to her husband in the underworld, Demeter mourns the loss of her daughter, and the world experiences winter, a pattern that mortals became very familiar with, learning to sow and harvest with the season. As for Persephone, she was quite happy to be both the goddess of spring and the queen of the underworld. Proof that you can be anything, and you can be a contradiction if you want to be. Your hobbies and interests do not have to make sense to anyone other than you. So that's it for this week. Check back next week for more stories from Greek mythology.